We have a couple sit downs of Donald Trump to look at, and maybe a guest appearance from JD Vance as well, which I think, especially with Trump, point to his mental acuity, starting with finally a reporter pushing back on one of the most absurd claims that Donald Trump likes to make. So let's just jump right into it.
I did more for the black community than anybody, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. Whether you like it or not, people say, "Oh, that's
you
interesting."
really you believe you did more than Lyndon Johnson, who passed the Civil Rights Act?
I think I did, yeah.
How?
Because I got criminal
possibly did you
justice reform done. I got prison reform.
Lyndon Johnson.
I've done things. Well,
he passed the Civil Rights Act.
How has it worked out? If you take a look at what Lyndon Johnson did,
You think the Civil Rights Act was a mistake?
How has it worked out? Because frankly, it took a long time. But for African Americans,
but you think that was a
my
mistake?
Administration, Jonathan.
I mean, come on. Like, are we being so for real here? The Civil Rights Act ended segregation, strengthened voting rights for African Americans, expanded civil and legal rights to African Americans, created the EEOC, which takes on employment discrimination claims single-handedly, has lowered the rate of employment discrimination. It's led to increased incomes for African Americans, increased wealth for African Americans, while Trump signed the First Step Act, which, by the way, was bipartisanly created in Congress, introduced by a Democrat. It wasn't a Trump-led initiative. And even then, the act had more negatives in it than positives, even if we're going to give him sole credit for a bill he didn't create. He just signed because optically it would have looked terrible for him if he didn't. It reinforced structural racism with its racially biased risk assessment tools, excluded immigrants, yes, legal immigrants as well, from any of the reforms because, you know, brown people don't deserve rights. It protected and expanded private prisons where discrimination is seen at its strongest and most disproportionate levels, expanded e-carceration, which is home detention, monitoring, like ankle bracelets, this kinds of things, which disproportionately expanded the carceral state into colored communities. And it also allowed for faith-based discrimination. All experts agree on the matter that it was 2 steps back for any 1 step forward, and that it didn't go far enough in any of the minimal benefits it did have, which is probably the only reason Trump actually signed it.
I've never heard of stuff like this before. And I think that I think that 60 Minutes should go off the air. I think it's the worst broadcast scandal I've ever heard.
No, it's not journalism. They don't do journalism over.
Well, it's also election interference. It also is license threatening. You know, they have a license from, that's not cable. Here they have a license from the federal government. And they pay nothing. They pay peanuts. They pay nothing. They should take that license away from them.
I mean, threatening and wanting to censor and shut down media that isn't 100% favorable to you, this definitely isn't what a dictator would do. It's definitely not the first step of fascism, right, guys? Like, this is the playbook of Trump front and center and the playbook of fascism, but I'm sure that's just like an oopsies, right? He only discredits media, all media that isn't 100% favorable to him. I mean, if he really had to stick with fake news or fake media, he would come out against Fox News that has been sued for the largest defamation case in American history, but he doesn't because they're favorable to him. That alone shows what his playbook here is for anyone with common sense, but he does it so his followers will believe that they can't trust anything they hear on any media station that is negative of Trump, so they're less believable of those negative claims and will instead trust whatever it is that Trump's telling them, so he's always seen in positive lights, or stories are always digested through the lens that he wants them to. It's quite literally the destructions of institutions, which is historically fascistic, and the people who won't trust any media, won't trust any courts, won't trust any politician, but will trust Trump on everything, they just want to anoint a king, which is inherently undemocratic.
Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator,
Lulu,
yes or no?
okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the
And
2020
I've answered
election?
your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
Yeah, so I had to add this one in there of JD just to show Vance's weaselly nature and his inability to answer this single easy question. And first off, no independent analysis has found that it cost Trump millions of votes. He's highly just lying there, right? Analysis actually shows that the only people who cared about the story were Republicans who also were following the story. So not Biden voters any way, shape, or form, but it's also kind of funny how Trump constantly still talks about 2020, says he won all 50 states in 2020, whines about it being stolen, says the Democrats stole it in every single rally. Trust me, I know because I watch most of them. Vance constantly talks about Trump's presidency. I mean, how he talks more about the last 4 years than the next 4 years. But the second the election comes up, it's, well, we don't want to talk about the past. We're looking forward. They know it destroys their credibility. They know that independent voters don't buy the lies like the cult does. So they have to weasel out of this question any way they can. And for Vance specifically, he gets dropped like a sack of potatoes the second he says Trump lost.